The smell of grilled meat filled the air. Kids were laughing in the backyard. It was supposed to be the happiest weekend of my year. A simple barbecue with neighbors, friends, and family. The kind of peace I had been chasing ever since I moved into this so-called perfect community. But peace never lasts long when the HOA is watching. As the sun went down, I saw them marching toward my house. Clipboard in hand, eyes cold like stone. They said I was violating rules again. They said the smoke, the music, the laughter was not allowed. They killed the power. They shouted at my guests. They tried to shut me down. But what they did not know was that one of my guests was not just any friend. He was carrying a badge. And that night, the HOA had no idea they were about to expose themselves. Before I tell you how one simple barbecue turned into a federal investigation, tell me from which country are you watching this story? And if you love stories where karma finds its way, hit the subscribe button and join me in this fight against the HOA. When I first pulled into that shiny new neighborhood, I felt like I was stepping into some picture-perfect American dream. White fences, trim lawns, houses that looked cloned right out of a magazine. I told myself this was the fresh start I needed. Clean slate, new life, no drama, just peace. But peace in that place came with a rule book thicker than a Bible. I didn't notice it at first. I was too busy unpacking boxes, too busy smiling at all the polite neighbors who waved like they were rehearsing for a commercial. They said, "Welcome to the community." I said thanks. Had no clue I was walking straight into a trap. The first letter hit me before I even finished unpacking. Some typed-up notice saying my trash cans were visible from the street longer than allowed. I laughed thinking it was a joke. But the next one came 2 days later. So my porch light was too bright. Too bright. Like, are we measuring sunlight now? That's when I met Marcia Collins, president of the Homeowners Association. Perfect hair. Perfect teeth. The kind of person who says bless your heart, but means something else entirely. She smiled when she spoke, but her eyes fell sharp. She said, "We take pride in keeping our community beautiful." I said, "Sure," but deep down I could feel it. Control. That's what it was really about. I tried playing along. Mowed the lawn twice a week. Repainted the fence. Replaced the mailbox because apparently mine was 2 shades darker than regulation tan. I did everything by the book. Still got more letters. It became like clockwork. Every Monday, new violation, new fine. Then one day, I saw this black SUV creeping past my house. Tinted windows. Slow roll. Like they were hunting. My buddy from 2 houses down told me that's HOA patrol. They drive around snapping pics of anyone breaking the rules. I thought he was joking till I caught them aiming a camera at my driveway. I stepped out and said, "Hey, can I help you?" They peeled off without a word. I stood there realizing I was being watched inside my own neighborhood. A few weeks later, my old college buddy Ethan called. Hadn't seen him in years. Said he was in town. I told him come by, we'll grill some burgers like old times. When he pulled up, I swear it felt like oxygen again. Same dude, same grin. Sharp as ever. We fired up the grill. Threw on burgers. Music playing low. It felt good. I told him about the HOA madness. He laughed, said, "Bro, you serious?" I said, "Dead serious. These folks got more rules than the FBI." He smirked and said, "Sounds like you need a new hobby." Right in the middle of the laughter, Marcia showed up. Clipboard in hand. Smile too wide to be real. She said I was violating smoke regulations and community harmony standards. Harmony. That word again. I told her it's a backyard barbecue. She said, "Doesn't matter. You didn't file the proper request form." Ethan looked at me, then at her like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I told her I'd move the grill. She said, "Too late, violation already issued." Then she walked off like a sheriff after giving a ticket. After she left, Ethan said that lady got some serious power trip going on. I told him, yeah, and she's just getting started. The next morning, I found another letter. Thicker paper this time. Said I owed $100 for unauthorized smoke drift. Said the smoke from my grill crossed the community fence line. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the thing. I called the HOA office and asked if this was a prank. The lady on the phone said, "No, sir, rules are rules." That night, Ethan came over again with a 6-pack. We sat on the porch. He told me HOAs are basically mini governments. Little kingdoms run by people with clipboards and too much time. I said I didn't move here to fight anybody. I just wanted peace. He said, "Yeah, well, sometimes peace costs more than you think." Days turned into weeks. Every time that SUV drove by, I felt my stomach twist. I started keeping curtains shut. Felt like a prisoner in my own house. So I said, screw it. I'm throwing a barbecue again. I sent out texts to a few neighbors. Said we're doing this right. Burgers, ribs, cold drinks. No rules. Ethan said he'd help. Said he's bringing ribs and a surprise. I asked what kind of surprise. He said you'll see. That Saturday felt like summer finally woke up. Blue sky, hot sun, music blasting, kids running through sprinklers, neighbors laughing. It felt real again, like how life should be. I remember flipping a burger, thinking maybe things are turning around. Then I saw her, Marcia, walking down the street with two board members behind her. Clipboards ready. They looked like storm clouds in human form. I muttered, here we go again. Ethan leaned over and said this should be fun. She stopped right at my gate. Said I was in violation of multiple community rules. Noise level, crowd size, unapproved gathering, smoke output. Said I needed to shut it down immediately. I told her it's my yard, my party. She said property inside an HOA still follows harmony standards. Harmony? I swear that word haunted me. The guests went quiet. Some folks started packing. Felt my blood boiling. Ethan stayed cool, just watching. Marcia snapped pictures that then one of her guys walked to my outlet and yanked the cord. Music died, that laughter gone. Just silence. I stepped forward, ready to lose it. Ethan grabbed my shoulder and said, chill man, not now. Let them dig their own hole. That I took a deep breath. Marcia said I'd receive a violation notice within 24 hours and turn away like she'd won. When everyone left that night, I sat on the porch with Ethan. Darkness everywhere. The smell of cold smoke still hanging. I said, I can't take this anymore, man. He said, good. That means you're ready. I looked at him confused. He said, don't worry. Sometimes people like her forget who they're messing with. I asked what he meant. He said, I've seen this kind of power trip before. Let's just say she picked the wrong party to crash. The next morning, I checked the mail. There it was. Red ink. Urgent. Violation Tier 3. $1,200 fine. Mandatory hearing. I showed it to Ethan. He scanned it slow, then smiled that half smile of his. Said this letter's got holes all over it. This ain't standard HOA format. I said, how would you even know that? He said, let's just say I've read a lot of files. And that's when the story started to turn. The way Ethan looked at that letter gave me chills. He wasn't laughing anymore. His eyes went sharp, focused, like some switch flipped in his head. He said this thing ain't just about fines. It's about power. I asked, what are you talking about? He said, trust me, man, these folks aren't just bored neighbors. They're hiding something. That night, he parked his car near the HOA office. Said he just wanted to observe. I thought he was overreacting. I told him you can't fight City Hall. He said, maybe not, but you can sure expose it. For the next few days, he kept showing up with that calm look. Said he noticed the HOA treasurer sneaking in after hours. Same car, same time, no lights inside. He said that's weird for a volunteer position. I told him maybe she's just filing paperwork. He said, yeah, paperwork doesn't require locking the door from inside and staying till 3 a.m. Then one evening, I saw headlights in my driveway. Ethan again. He said, get in. I told him, where we going? He said, you'll see. We parked near the community lake. The same one the HOA called their pride and joy. No swimming, no fishing, no anything allowed there. He said, you ever wonder why? I said, they just want to keep it clean. He said, no, man. It's because they're dumping stuff. He pointed to a pipe running from behind the HOA maintenance shed straight into the lake. I'd never noticed it before. Faint smell of chemicals in the air. Ethan said that pipe's not for rainwater. I asked, how do you know that? He said, because I tested it. He pulled a small glass vial from his pocket. Cloudy liquid inside. Said I ran a quick check. This stuff's toxic. I said, how the hell did you even test it? He smiled and said, old habits. I started connecting dots in my head. The fines, the rules, the secrecy. I said, so what are you telling me? He said, I'm telling you these people are poisoning their own lake to cut maintenance costs. They're using industrial cleaner to keep the water looking clear. Saves them money. Kills everything underneath. I said, that's insane. He said, no, it's calculated. I didn't know whether to believe him. Then he handed me a flash drive. Said everything's on here. Pictures, video, documents. He said, I've been digging since that first barbecue. Marcia's been hiding inspection reports, forging signatures, stealing from the community fund. I stared at him like, man, who even are you? He leaned back against his car and said, all right, time for honesty. I'm with the Bureau. Undercover. Been tracking similar HOA scams across the state. This one's dirty all the way down. I asked, so you're FBI? He nodded. So I didn't plan on pulling you into it, but after what they did, I couldn't let it slide. I just stood there under that flickering streetlight, my brain spinning. My old college buddy turned out to be a federal agent, and here I was worrying about grill smoke. He said, I need your help. They trust you enough to keep sending letters. If we push back the right way, they'll make a mistake. And when they do, we got them. So I did what he said. Next week, I got another letter demanding I appear before the HOA board for my so-called violations. Ethan told me, perfect. Show up. Be polite. Record everything. The hearing was held inside the clubhouse. Fluorescent lights buzzing. Marcia sitting at the head table with that smug grin. She started reading off my list of offenses like she was running a courtroom. Unauthorized event. Disturbance. Disrespect to board members. She said my behavior was unbecoming of a resident. I said, unbecoming, huh? She said yes. I said, okay, but what's becoming about dumping poison into our lake? You could have heard a pin drop. Her face went pale. The other board members froze. One guy stood up like he might say something, but Marcia shot him a look. I said, yeah, I know about the pipe. The chemicals. The missing funds. She tried to laugh it off. Said those are false accusations. Ethan stepped forward from the back of the room, flashed his badge, said, actually, ma'am, they're not. The place went dead silent. Marcia tried to grab her phone, but one of the other board members snatched it away. Apparently, he'd been waiting for this, too. Ethan said, we've been tracking your accounts for weeks. Fake invoices. Money routed through shell companies. And now, environmental violations. She looked ready to faint. The next hours were a blur. Unmarked cars rolled in. Officers moving quick. People whispering. Neighbors standing outside confused. Turns out Ethan had the whole operation lined up. The feds had been waiting for a moment like this. All they needed was one public confrontation to trigger action. The lake was sealed off. Cleanup crews moved in. News vans showed up the next morning. Headlines everywhere. Local HOA under federal investigation. Community shocked. Marcia in custody. I watched it all from my porch. That same porch that used to feel like a cage. Now it felt free again. Ethan walked up holding 2 coffees. Handed me one. Said, guess you're famous now. I laughed. Ann said, yeah, the guy who grilled too hard. He said, nah, the guy who stood up when no one else would. We sat there watching the sunrise. Birds flying over the lake that finally looked clean again. I asked him what happens now. He said, new board. New rules. Maybe this time they'll actually care about people instead of power. Before he left, he looked back and said, you ever think about working with us? I said, nah, man, I just wanted to flip burgers in peace. He laughed, said, fair enough. Then got in his car and drove off into the morning light. A week later, I got one last letter. But this time it wasn't a fine. It was an apology from the temporary HOA board. Said, thank you for helping clean up the community. I pin it on my fridge like a trophy. Every time I fire up the grill now, I think about that night. The noise, the tension, the silence after the power cut, and then the moment it all flipped. I guess the funny part is the HOA tried to shut down my barbecue to protect their perfect little image. But they didn't know an FBI agent was sitting right there eating ribs. So yeah, maybe life throws you in weird places. Maybe sometimes you just want to grill some burgers, and the universe says, now you're going to help take down a crime ring instead. But hey, that's America, right? Wild things happen in the most normal-looking neighborhoods. After the arrest, the neighborhood felt strange. Quiet but not peaceful. Like the calm after a storm that still has thunder hiding in the clouds. People waved again, but it felt different now. Real maybe, or maybe just nervous. The lake sat behind yellow tape like a wounded animal. Birds landed near it, then flew off quick. The smell of bleach and mud hung in the air. Ethan stayed in town longer than planned. Said the case wasn't over yet. I figured once the feds swooped and that was it. But he said, nah, man, corruption spreads. You cut one head off and 2 more pop out. He spent nights on calls running reports. I'd see the glow of his laptop through my window. Reminded me of how deep this thing went. One morning he knocked on my door with that serious face again. Said, we need to talk. We sat on the porch sipping coffee. He told me there's more to it. Marcia wasn't running solo. Turns out a regional contractor had been paying off multiple HOAs to dump cleaning waste into lakes. Cheaper than legal disposal. I said, so there are others. He said, yeah, and this one's connected straight to state contracts. I said, damn. He said we might need bait. Someone local. Someone they already think they can manipulate. I said, you're not dragging me back into that mess. He said, I ain't asking you to wear a wire. Just need you to act like you're opening another barbecue event. Public. Friendly. Get them talking again. See who comes knocking. I stared at him for a long minute. Part of me wanted nothing to do with it. I'd already been through hell. But another part of me knew walking away meant those people win. I told him fine. One last grill. So we planned it. Low-key at first. Just a casual community reopening after the scandal. I sent out flyers. Made it sound neighborly. Burgers back. Lake clean again. Let's celebrate. The new temporary board approved it. Said it'd help rebuild trust. Day of the event felt weirdly similar to the first one. Same sky. Same smell of charcoal. But this time of air carried something else. Tension maybe. Like everyone waiting for something to go wrong. Ethan stayed close, pretending to just hang out. But I could see that look in his eyes. Scanning. Watching. People showed up slow. At first just a few families. Then more. Laughter started to return. Music played soft. I tried to relax. Told myself, this is healing. Then I noticed a couple new faces. Suits too nice for a backyard barbecue. They stuck near the food table, not talking to anyone. Ethan caught my eye and nodded slightly. That silent signal said, keep cool. About an hour in, one of them approached me. Tall guy, gray hair, slicked back sunglasses, even though it wasn't that sunny. He said, nice turnout. I said, thanks. He said, shame about what happened with the previous board. I said, yo, wild stuff. He said, sometimes leadership gets messy. He spoke like he was testing me. Like each word carried a hidden message. He asked if the lake cleanup cost much. I said, probably a lot. He said, well, maybe next time the community could cut costs if they had a proper supplier. I said, supplier for what? He said, maintenance chemicals. Then he smiled, that kind of smile that ain't friendly. Ethan stepped closer, pretending to grab a soda. His eyes locked on the guy. I said, nah, man, we're going all natural now. Try to keep the fish alive this time. The guy chuckled, said, well, nature's expensive. Then walked off. Ethan whispered under his breath, that's our guy. We let him mingle. He talked to two other folks near the fence. They all kept their voices low. Ethan subtly recorded everything using his phone hidden in a napkin tray. I kept flipping burgers, trying to act normal, but my heart was racing. As the sun dipped low, those three suits started heading toward the parking lot. Ethan gave me a tiny nod, then followed. I stayed behind, watching from the porch. A few minutes later, I heard distant shouting, then screeching tires. I ran down the driveway, but by the time I reached the road, Ethan was gone. Just his phone lying near the curb screen, cracked, still recording. I grabbed it and called his number. No answer. The next hours blurred. Cops came. Feds arrived. I told them what happened. They started searching the woods near the lake. I stood there feeling useless. Cold air creeping in. The community that once felt like a cage now felt like a maze. Around midnight, headlights flashed from the far side of the lake. An unmarked van speeding away. One of the agents yelled to block the exit, but it was too late. They vanished into the dark. I sat on the porch till sunrise. Couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like that van coming back. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text said, I'm fine. Stay calm. Meet me by the dock at noon. It was Ethan. My knees almost gave out from relief. At noon, I walked down to the dock. The lake looked clearer than before. The air still smelled like bleach, but the water sparkled under the sun. Ethan was there leaning against a post, bruised but smiling. He said, told you it gets messy. I asked what the hell happened. He said they tried to grab the evidence. Didn't realize backup was already tracking them. We got what we needed. He handed me a small black drive. Said this contains proof of the supplier ring. Payments. Invoices. Everything. Said we're shutting them down for good. I looked at him and said, man, you gotta stop using my parties as bait. He laughed, said, yeah, maybe next time we do poker night instead. For a moment, the tension broke. Felt like old times again. Two friends talking trash by the water. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished. Not yet. We stood by that lake for a long time. The water calm, like it didn't just hold the weight of everything we went through. I watched ripples move across the surface and thought about how peaceful things can look even when something dark hides underneath. Ethan said we did good work. I said, yeah, but at what cost? He said sometimes peace needs a fight. He walked me through everything. Said the guys from a barbecue were middlemen. The suits were part of a bigger cleanup company that used local HOAs to dump their waste. Cheaper, faster, under the radar. Said the case now reached federal level. More agents were coming. I told him I was done being bait. He smiled, said, no man, your job's over. Time to breathe again. For the first time in months, I believed him. The next few weeks, the neighborhood started changing. Fences got repainted. New faces joined the board. People smiled again without that fake edge. The new president was this older guy named Ron. Ex-fighter. Straight shooter. No nonsense. He came by and said, we owe you big time, son. I said, you owe me nothing. Just keep the rules fair and the water clean. He nodded, said deal. For a while it felt like normal life again. I wake up, grill breakfast just because I could. The smell of bacon carried down the block, and nobody complained. Kids fished off the dock. People held picnics. Laughter returned like music that had been turned off too long. But one night something woke me. A sound like tires crunching gravel. I peeked through the blinds. Saw a black van parked near the maintenance shed. No markings. Headlights off. I grabbed my phone and texted Ethan. Said, you better not tell me that's coincidence. He replied, 2 words. Stay inside. I watched from the dark window. 3 silhouettes moved by the fence line. Flashlights flicking. One of them pried open the shed door. Another carried something heavy. I couldn't see what. After a few minutes, they loaded it into the van and drove off toward the service road. Next morning, the dock was half sunk. Boards warped. Water darker. The cleanup crew found residue near the pipe again. Someone had tried to dump more chemicals overnight. Ethan arrived furious. Said it was retaliation. Said some people never learn. I asked him what now. He said, now we finish this. He set up surveillance near the shed. Small cameras hidden inside fake birdhouses. Said they'd catch whoever came back. For 2 nights, nothing happened. On the 3rd, the cameras caught the same van returning. License plates traced back to one of the suspended contractors. That was enough. Arrests followed within days. The head of the company tried to deny everything, but the evidence was solid. When the news broke, the whole town talked about it. People finally understood what the HOA mess was really covering. It wasn't about lawns or lights. It was about money, pollution, power. One evening after it was all done, Ethan came by again. No bike, no file, just him. Said he was heading back to D.C. Case wrapped. I asked him what happens to Marcia. He said she's facing real charges now. Embezzlement, environmental fraud, perjury. Might not see daylight for a long time. I said good. We sat on the porch watching sunset burn the sky orange. I told him, man, it's funny. All I wanted was a quiet neighborhood, a place to grill and chill. Now look at this. News vans, court cases, federal busts. He laughed, said, that's life, buddy. You light one grill and end up burning a whole system. He stood up to leave, shook my hand, said, keep that lake clean. I said, always. He said, and maybe next time, send me an invite before you start a revolution. We both laughed. After he left, I sat there listening to crickets. The kind of sound that tells you peace is finally real. The kind you feel in your chest. Weeks passed. No more letters. No more fines. The neighborhood felt alive again. We held a community dinner right by the lake. No forms, no rules, no drama. Just folks sharing food under string lights. I looked around at the faces and thought, yeah, this is what it's supposed to be. Halfway through the night, Ron raised a glass. Said, here's to new beginnings. To honesty. To the man who stood his ground. The crowd cheered. I felt my face heat up, but I smiled anyway. It wasn't pride. It was relief. After everyone left, I stayed behind by the dock. The moon reflected on the surface like a silver coin. The air smelled clean for once. I thought about everything that happened. The fear, the anger, the laughter, and how sometimes the people who try to silence you end up exposing themselves. A soft breeze moved across the water. I could almost hear Ethan's voice saying, you did good, kid. I picked up a rock and tossed it into the lake. Ripples spread, wide, fading into calm again. That's when I realized peace doesn't mean silence. It means freedom. The next morning, I opened my mailbox expecting bills. Instead, there was a letter from a new HOA. It said, "Dear resident, we thank you for your patience and courage during our transition. We are proud to announce the lake is officially safe for recreation. We invite you to a community-wide barbecue this weekend, hosted in your honor." I just stood there laughing, like full-on belly laugh. The irony hit hard. The HOA that once tried to shut me down, now throwing a barbecue for me. Saturday came. Sunshine, music, families everywhere. I fired up the same grill that started it all. Ron handed me an apron that said Grill Legend. I said, "Man, this is crazy." He said, "You earned it." As I flipped burgers and watched smoke rise into the sky, I thought about how things come full circle. How one simple act of standing up changed everything. Near the end of the night, I stepped up to the mic they'd set up. Said, "Look, I'm no hero. I'm just a guy who likes barbecue. But if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Don't let fear run your neighborhood. Don't let power hide behind fake smiles and fine print. We all deserve to live without someone breathing down our necks telling us our grass is too tall." The crowd clapped. Some laughed. Some cried. I looked out at the faces glowing under the lights. It felt right. As the party wound down, I sat by the lake again. The water reflected fireworks from someone's backyard. It looked alive, healthy, free, and so was I. That night before bed, I texted Ethan. Said Lake's clean party's wild, wish you were here. He replied simple. "Told you, man, sometimes you just gotta flip one burger to start a fire." I smiled, put my phone down, and finally slept like a man who earned his peace. The morning after the party, I woke up with that quiet kind of peace that almost feels suspicious. Birds chirping, smell of charcoal still hanging in the air. For a second, I thought maybe the world finally decided to chill. But deep down, something felt off. I walked out to grab coffee from my porch when I saw a white envelope sitting under the welcome mat. No stamp, no handwriting, just blank. I tore it open. Inside was a USB drive. No note, no clue, just that. My gut told me this wasn't some friendly neighborhood gift. I plugged it into my laptop half expecting a virus, but instead a video popped up. Shaky camera. Looked like security footage. Timestamp from a few months back. It showed the same lake I fought to protect. Two people talking by the maintenance shed. One was Marcia, the old HOA president. The other was some guy in a black suit. He handed her a folder thick like it held secrets worth money. She counted cash from an envelope and nodded. My stomach dropped. The audio kicked in halfway. Her voice said, "Don't worry about the resident, he's loud, but harmless." Then the man said, "As long as he stays quiet." I paused it, replayed it, over and over. My name flashed on a document inside that folder. They had been watching me even before the barbecue. They knew I was asking questions. They knew I was recording meetings. I sat there frozen. Part of me angry, part of me scared. But mostly I felt used. Like all this time I thought I was just fighting petty rules. Turns out I was standing in the middle of something way bigger. I called Ethan. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. I texted him a screenshot. Within minutes, he replied one line. "Meet me at the diner in 20. I drove fast. When I got there, he was already sitting in the corner booth sipping black coffee like always. I slid the USB across the table. He didn't even plug it in. Said, "Yeah, I know." I asked him, "What the hell you mean, you know?" He leaned in low voice serious. Said that footage came from a hidden FBI cam. We've been tracking Marcia's contact for months. Turns out he's not just some contractor. He's connected to a major developer laundering money through fake community projects, dumping chemical waste into small-town lakes like yours. I felt the room spin. So all this time, I said all those letters fines parties, they weren't just about control. They were a cover. He nodded. Said the HOA was being used as a front. Marcia got greedy. Started taking side deals. When you started poking around, they panicked. The barbecue gave them the perfect reason to label you as trouble. They thought if they embarrassed you enough, you'd leave. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Said, "Well, that backfired hard." He smiled faintly, said, "You burned their house of cards." Then he said something that hit deep. Said, "What you don't know is your name kept this investigation alive. We had to pull your file when your complaint reached state level. Your persistence forced us to look closer. If you hadn't raised hell, the lake would still be poison." I sat there in silence. Didn't know if I should feel proud or furious. He pulled out a folder and slid it to me. Inside were photos, documents, bank transfers, every shady deal Marcia signed off on, her signature on every page. Proof enough to bury her. He said we couldn't release this until the case closed. But now it's done. You deserve to see what you fought against. I flipped through pages, saw invoices for fake landscaping, maintenance budgets that never existed, company names that led nowhere. It all made sense. The sudden HOA fee hike, the random construction near the lake, the late-night trucks. I asked him what happens now. He said we move forward. The FBI will handle the cleanup. The developers are facing charges. You, on the other hand, might want to lay low for a bit. I said after everything I'm done laying low. He grinned, said I figured you'd say that. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small patch. Silver lettering on black fabric. It read Community Integrity Task Force. He said unofficially you're one of us now. I laughed, said, I don't even know what that means. He said it means you don't back down when it matters. And that's rare these days. I took the patch, held it in my hand. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about being seen. Like finally someone understood why I fought so hard. When I got home, I sat on the porch again. Watched kids ride bikes past my house. Life looked normal. But in my chest, everything had changed. I opened my phone and recorded a voice memo. Not for social media. Not for anyone. Just for myself. I said this whole time, I thought I was fighting for a barbecue. Turns out I was fighting for truth. For fairness. For the right to breathe clean air and eat food that doesn't come with a warning label. I stopped. Replayed it. Deleted it. Some truths don't need sharing. They just need living. As the sun dipped low behind the trees, I thought about Ethan's words. About how one person standing up can shake a whole system. I never wanted to be that person, but life doesn't ask for permission. It just throws you in the fire and watches what you do next. And I guess I didn't burn. I built something. The wind picked up. Ripples crossed the lake again. The same lake they tried to poison, now reflecting the sky clear and pure. That's when I realized the revelation wasn't just about what they did. It was about who I became because of it. A few days passed, and things started to settle, but my mind wouldn't rest. I kept replaying Ethan's words like an echo stuck between my ribs. All those late nights, all that anger, all those stupid HOA meetings. Every moment that felt pointless suddenly had purpose. It felt good, but heavy too. I started going back through old emails, notes I had taken, pictures of letters they sent. I realized I had built a timeline without even knowing it. Proof of how far they were willing to go. Fines, threats, fake safety inspections. They all connected to the same goal. Silence. I thought about the other residents who never asked questions. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they thought someone else would fix it. I used to be like that too, until they pushed too far. One afternoon, Ron stopped by, said the new board wanted me to see something. I followed him to the lake where they had set up a small plaque near the dock. It read, "This community stands for integrity, dedicated to those who fought for what's right." My name etched to the bottom. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I asked him why do this. He said because folks forget easy. This will remind them not to. As he left, I just stood there staring at that plaque, thinking how crazy life gets when you stop running from your problems and face them head on. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. It was a woman's voice, calm but nervous. She said she used to work under Marcia as an assistant. Said she quit when things got shady, but she had something I needed to see. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were handwritten notes. Marcia's personal records. Names of people she paid off. Even some local cops. My stomach turned. The woman said she couldn't sleep knowing innocent people were being poisoned while rich folks fill their pockets. She said Marcia was just a puppet. Someone else ran the show. That someone was the developer himself. His name appeared in the notes again and again. Initials next to large payments. Everything tied to his private firm. I asked her why bring this to me. She said because you're the only one who didn't quit. Then she left. Just like that. I sat there staring at the papers. It felt like holding a live wire. Part of me wanted to give it to Ethan right away, but something told me to read it all first. As I did, my chest got tight. There were details about a water project years ago. One that went bad. One that contaminated a nearby town. Same pattern. Same signatures. Only difference was back then nobody caught them. Until now. I knew this had to go public. But I also knew it had to be careful. One wrong move, and they'd twist it again. I sent copies to Ethan encrypted. Then I locked the originals in a box under my bed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked down to the dock barefoot. The moon was high, painting silver over the water. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the guy staring back. I wasn't just some neighbor mad about a barbecue anymore. I was a man who had seen what power looks like up close, and how it crumbles when truth walks in. Behind me, I heard footsteps. It was Ron. He handed me a beer, said, "Figured you could use this." We sat there quiet for a while. He said, "You ever regret starting it all?" I thought about it. About the stress, the threats, the nights wondering if I'd lose my home. Then I shook my head. Said no. If I didn't start, someone else would have had to. And maybe they wouldn't have made it through. He nodded, said, "You did what most folks are scared to do." I took a sip. The beer cold and bitter. Tasted like closure. The next morning news broke about more arrests. Not just Marcia or the contractors. The developer himself. The one behind it all. The anchor said federal investigators confirmed multiple cases of environmental fraud spanning 3 states. I just sat there in my kitchen watching the TV glow. My name flashed at the bottom of the screen for a second. Local resident whose complaint led to investigation. I laughed. Small, quiet laugh. Not pride. Not relief. Just disbelief that one man's stubborn fight over a grill could turn into this. Calls poured in. Reporters. Activists. Even lawyers. I ignored most of them. I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. Later, Ethan called. Said, "Told you, man, truth always surfaces." I asked him if this was the end. He said it never really ends, but you've earned your rest. After that, I decided to take a trip. Drove upstate. Found a small cabin near another lake. No HOAs. No rules. Just me and open water. The first night there, I lit a small fire outside. Grilled a burger just because it felt poetic. As smoke rose into the dark sky, I thought about everyone who gets pushed around by people with too much power, and how sometimes all it takes is one no to change everything. I picked up my phone and hit record again. This time it wasn't a memo. It was a message. I said to whoever's watching this, wherever you're from, don't let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter. Because it does. Sometimes the loudest change starts from the quietest backyard. I smiled into the camera. Said, "By the way, where are you watching this from? I'm real curious. Drop your country below, and don't forget to subscribe if you felt this story hit home." Then I ended the recording. The fire cracked beside me. The lake shimmered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The revelation wasn't just the truth about them. It was the truth about me. That I was never fighting against an HOA. I was fighting against giving up. And I finally won. You ever win a battle, but feel like you lost a piece of yourself doing it? That's what the weeks after the big reveal felt like. Folks kept calling me a hero. Neighbors waved when I walked by. News people showed up asking for interviews. But inside I just felt tired. The quiet I had wanted for so long was finally here, but it didn't sound like peace. It sounded like aftermath. Everywhere I went, people wanted to talk about the lake. About the HOA. About the corruption. Some call me brave. Others call me lucky. But when I looked in their eyes, I saw fear. Like they finally realized how easy it is to lose control of your own life. I tried to act normal. Kept mowing the lawn. Grilling on weekends. Helping Ron fix stuff around the neighborhood. But every time I saw that plaque by the dock, my chest got tight. It reminded me that calm doesn't always mean safe. Then the letters started again. Not from the HOA this time. From strangers. Some thanking me. Some angry. One even said I ruined property values by bringing attention to the town. I tossed most of them, but one stuck out. Handwritten in blue ink. It said I used to live near that lake. I lost my husband because of what they dumped there. Thank you for fighting back. I just sat there reading it over and over. The paper shaking in my hands. That's when I realized the fallout wasn't just mine. It belonged to everyone they hurt. I called Ethan again. Said, "Man, I don't even know what to do with all this." He said, "Take a breath. That's what fallout feels like. Messy but necessary." He told me the case was sparking new investigations in other states. Said the files I handed over opened doors to things bigger than both of us. He sounded proud, but I could tell he was worn down too. I said, "You ever get tired of chasing bad people?" He laughed, said, "Every day." But the minute you stop, they win. After that call, I sat outside under the porch light. Crickets humming, air thick and warm. I started thinking about how strange it is that life moves on even when you're still stuck in the storm. People around me were healing. The lake was open again, kids swimming, parents smiling. But I still felt that weight in my gut, like I couldn't just go back to pretending everything was fine. So I started writing. Not for the news, not for fame, just for me. Wrote about the nights I doubted myself, the fear of standing alone, the guilt of wanting to quit. Words spilled out like smoke from a fire that had been burning too long. One night, Ron came over, said you should turn that writing into something bigger. Maybe a talk, a podcast, something to tell folks they're not powerless. I told him I didn't know how to be that guy. He said you already are. His words stuck with me. A week later, I got invited to a local town hall. They wanted me to speak about what happened. I almost said no. Public speaking was never my thing. But something inside said go. Maybe people needed to hear the truth from someone who lived it, not just reported it. The hall was packed. Faces I recognized, and some I didn't. I stood at that microphone, heart pounding. I said I'm not a hero. I'm just stubborn. I said I never meant to expose corruption or make headlines. I just wanted to grill some food and live in peace. But when you push back against wrong long enough, sometimes right finally shows up. The room went silent. Then people clapped. It wasn't loud or wild. It was steady, real. After that night, things started shifting again. People began showing up to board meetings, asking questions, demanding transparency. Turns out courage spreads faster than fear when someone lights the match first. But the more attention the story got, the more the media twisted it. One headline said, "Local man destroys HOA tyranny." Another said, "Small town rebel sparks chaos." I barely recognized myself in their stories. They wanted a villain or a savior. I was neither, just human. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about that woman's letter, about her husband, about all the unseen fallout. I started volunteering with a local environmental group, helping clean rivers, testing water. I didn't know much, but I learned fast. And it felt good to do something that wasn't about me for once. Some nights, I'd sit by the lake alone, wind cool on my face, stars above bright like they were watching. I'd think about how close I came to walking away from all this, how easy it would have been to sell my house and start over somewhere quiet. But now I knew better. Peace isn't about running. It's about standing your ground until the noise fades. Still, the silence sometimes hurt. There were nights when I'd hear a car outside, and my chest would tighten thinking it was someone coming to finish what they started. Trauma lingers like smoke, invisible but heavy. I kept a small notebook beside my bed, wrote one line every night before sleep. Sometimes it was about hope, sometimes fear, sometimes just a word like breathe or alive. Each line felt like closing another wound. Slow but sure. One day, Ethan texted me again. Said, "You ever think about joining full-time?" He meant the task force. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say yes, to keep fighting, to feel that rush again. But another part of me just wanted to rest. I typed back, "Maybe someday. Right now I just want to live." He replied, "Fair enough, hero." Then a laughing emoji. First time I'd seen him joke. I smiled, because maybe that's what healing looked like. Small laughter after too much pain. The fallout wasn't over. But maybe it didn't need to be that. Maybe some stories aren't meant to end clean. They just fade into something real. Time kept moving like it always does, but something inside me stayed stuck between past and present. Mornings felt lighter, but nights still carried echoes. I'd wake up sometimes hearing phantom knocks or tires rolling slow past my house. Old fear pretending to be memory. The town started to grow again. New families moved in. The lake became a selling point now. Safe, clean, beautiful. People posted pictures online, calling it paradise. I'd smile, but part of me whispered, "You have no idea what this paradise cost." Ron asked me to help design a memorial garden near the water. Said he wanted a place for reflection. We planted willows and wildflowers, built benches out of reclaimed wood. Every weekend, kids came to paint rocks with words like hope, peace, and truth. I'd sit there watching them laugh, thinking how different the world looks when you believe it can heal. But healing isn't straight. Some neighbors still carried bitterness. One guy from the old board glared whenever he saw me, said under his breath that I ruined everything good about the community. I didn't argue. Truth doesn't need defense. I spent more time volunteering outside town, traveling to small communities fighting similar battles, teaching them how to read fine print in HOA rules, how to file public records, how to not back down. I didn't call it activism, just experience shared. One night, after talk, a teenage kid came up, said, "My dad says you're the guy who fought the system." I said, "Maybe." He said he wants to give up on our neighborhood, but after hearing you, I think we can fix it. That hit me hard. Maybe that's what purpose feels like when you're not looking for it. Still, sometimes the attention weighed heavy. Folks online arguing about me, like I was a brand, not a person. Some called me Braveheart, others called me troublemaker. I stopped reading comments. Peace isn't found in opinions. Ethan texted once in a while checking in. Said headquarters wanted to give me an award. I told him no thanks. Awards gather dust. Lakes gather life. That's enough. He said, "You're a weird dude, man, but I get it." One Friday night, I threw another barbecue. Nothing fancy, just close friends and a few new neighbors. Music low, laughter high. At one point, Ron raised a toast, said to second chances. I looked around and realized every single face there had been part of the chaos somehow. Victims, witnesses, helpers, all breathing the same fresh air now. That was real justice. After everyone left, I sat alone by the dying coals. Stars out again. Same spot where everything started. I thought about how one small act can ripple through time. A fight over a grill turned into a fight for integrity. And somewhere along the way, I found myself. The next morning, mail came. Another letter, but this time from the State Environmental Agency. Said the cleanup from our case inspired new guidelines. Stricter checks on private developments. My eyes watered reading that. Proof that noise can turn into change if you refuse to shut up. I walked down to the dock. The wind calmed the surface mirror smooth. Fish darting below like they knew they were safe now. I whispered to the water, "Thank you for holding on." A few weeks later, Ron stepped down as HOA president. Said it was time for new blood. He asked if I'd take his place. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my coffee. I said, "Man, I fought these people for a year. You think I'm going to sit in that chair?" He said, "That's exactly why you should. Because you remember what power feels like when it gets misused." I thought about it overnight, then said yes, but only temporary. First meeting, I sat at that table looking at the same kind of forms Marcia used to use. Same rules, same structure. But everything felt different. Transparency, open doors, no fear. Residents actually smiling during votes. Maybe that's what redemption looks like. Not perfection, just honesty. After 3 months, I stepped down. New leadership ready. I handed over the gavel and walked out feeling lighter. Like closing a long chapter. That night, I drove out to the cabin upstate again. The road empty, the sky wide. I played old country songs and laughed at nothing. Halfway there, I pulled over at a rest stop overlooking another lake. Moon shining clear. I sat on the hood of my truck thinking about everything. How chaos turned into purpose. How anger turned into strength. How maybe life throws storms not to drown you, but to wash you clean. I opened my phone, recorded one last message. I said, if you're watching this and you're stuck in your own battle, maybe it's a job, maybe a neighborhood, maybe life just kicking you around. Remember this. Peace ain't free. It costs courage. It costs sleepless nights. It costs losing people who never understood your fight. But when the smoke clears and you're still standing, that's real victory. I paused, looked out over the lake. Said, I'm just a regular guy who got tired of being quiet. And if I can push back, anyone can. So tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country below and subscribe if you ever felt like giving up but didn't. Because this story is ours now. I hit stop. The phone screen went dark. Only the stars stayed bright. I felt small but proud. Maybe that's all life wants from us. To keep showing up. To keep saying no when it matters. To keep believing that even the smallest backyard can start a revolution. The fallout had burned away what didn't belong. What was left was something simple. Peace. Purpose. And a lake that finally looked alive again. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. Silence everywhere. That soft kind that doesn't feel empty but peaceful. I made coffee and stepped out on the porch watching the fog roll off the water like it was breathing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tension in my chest. No weight. Just calm. It hit me then. Everything had come full circle. I started this whole fight over something simple. A barbecue, a few burgers, a night with friends. But the real story wasn't about meat or smoke or even rules. It was about control, about dignity, about one person standing up when everyone else had their head down. Life in this little town kept moving. Kids riding bikes down the same streets that used to be filled with angry board meetings and neighbor drama. Now those streets smelled like fresh paint and summer air. People said, "Good morning" again. Laughter traveled easier. And every now and then I'd see someone at the lake just sitting still, watching the ripples, maybe feeling the same thing I did. Peace earned the hard way. I still kept my grill clean. Not because I planned to fight another rule, but because it reminded me who I was before all this started. The guy who just wanted a good time with people he cared about. Sometimes the simplest things are worth fighting hardest for. One afternoon, Ron stopped by with a six-pack, said thought you might want company. We sat out back watching the sun drop. He told me the new HOA leadership was doing great. Open meetings, community picnics, transparency reports online. Said it felt like a real neighborhood again. I told him that's how it should have always been. He nodded, said we were just too blind to see it before. He asked if I'd ever move. I said, nah, this place tested me, but it's home now. Plus the lake still owes me a few more sunsets. Later that night, I opened my old journal. Pages filled with messy thoughts and half-baked plans. I read entries from the worst days. Nights when I almost quit. When the fear of losing everything felt bigger than any reason to keep going. But in between those words, I could see growth. Resilience hiding in scratches and scribbles. It made me smile. I realized then that maybe life doesn't hand you lessons gently. It throws you into chaos and expects you to build meaning out of it. And if you're lucky, you come out cleaner, stronger, wiser. Sometimes people still recognize me from the videos. They ask, are you that guy from the HOA story? I laugh and say, depends who's asking. They say, man, that was wild. I say, yeah, but it taught me something important. Never let anyone smaller than your soul tell you how to live. The internet moved on like it always does. New stories, new outrages, new distractions. But here in real life, the echoes still mattered. The lake stayed healthy. Kids kept fishing. And somehow the world felt just a bit better knowing that one small stand could spark change. A few months later, I hosted one final community barbecue. Not for revenge, not for protest, just celebration. Everyone came. Old board members, new ones, cops, firefighters, teachers, even the mailman who'd been delivering those HOA letters back in the day. The same spot, same grill, same stars. But this time, no tension, just warmth. When the fire started to fade, I stood up and said something simple. I said this story started because I wanted to do something normal. It turned into something bigger. But what I learned through it all is that community isn't built by power or money or rules. It's built by respect. By standing up for each other when it's hard. By remembering that no title gives anyone the right to play God. People clapped. Some cried. Ron raised his drink and shouted of freedom. I smiled and looked up at the sky. Smoke drifting up, blending with the stars. It looked beautiful. Messy but beautiful. Like life. As the night wrapped up, I walked down to the water one last time. The moon was bright. The reflection clear. I dipped my hand in and let the cool water run through my fingers. It felt like forgiveness. I whispered thank you again. Not to anyone specific, just to everything that got me here. The pain, the fear, the small victories. It all mattered. Then I turned back toward the laughter behind me and said to myself, you did it, man. You really did. When I uploaded the final video later that week, I added one last message at the end. It said, if you watched this far, you're part of the story now. Because this wasn't just about me versus an HOA. It's about every person who's ever been told to stay quiet when they knew they were right. It's about standing your ground, even when the ground shakes. I paused before hitting publish, smiled, and said one more line. So tell me where you're watching from. Because this story started in one backyard, but maybe it belongs to the whole world now. Hit that subscribe and keep your fire burning. I clicked post, and just like that, the circle closed. Not with anger, not with noise, but with peace. The kind of peace you can smell in the smoke of a finished barbecue. Feel in the laughter of friends. Hear in the quiet ripple of a lake that finally forgave you. And as the credits rolled in my head, I realized something simple. We all got our own HOA somewhere. someone, or something trying to dim our fire. But sometimes all it takes is one small act, one stubborn heart, one spark to light up the dark. So yeah, this is me signing off. The guy whose barbecue got shut down, whose fight went viral, who found his peace not in winning, but in never backing down.